Hello everyone, today I'm looking at 999, 9 persons, 9 hours, 9 doors, also known as the Nonary game series, which is very confusing because they change the title of the game every time to Virtue's Lost Reward and Zero Time Dilemma. So there are 3 games in this series, and I kind of just wanted to briefly talk about all 3 in this video. Simply because they're pretty similar and it's kind of hard to really cover all of them. So the way, if I had to guess what 999 is based on, it's pretty much based on Saw. Essentially that these characters are in these trapped room scenarios, and so most of it is puzzle solving, but it's also definitely, visual novel-ish. In that the concepts in this game are shockingly complex. When I started this game, I thought it'd be, oh, this is a fun little game where, you have to just survive. But the story in this game is really, really intense, and the puzzles are just really a small part of that, honestly. The story that is revealed and who is who and the conspiracy is crazy. In the first game, there are basically 9 other individuals. Once you're able to break out of the first room, you kind of meet them slowly, and each character also has a watch that has been almost attached to their wrist and is impossible to take off. And essentially after 9 hours, it will inject poison into the user's veins and kill them if they cannot escape the ship in time. And it seems they are stranded on something like the Titanic. At least from the inside, certainly seem like that, and each room is a different kind of either a puzzle or a trap or something for the players to go through. If you think of escape rooms, this is exactly what this is, and it's very, very cool. So it's a really great setup. You're kind of like thrown to this situation, and it's very easy to humanize with the characters who are in this weird scenario where they have to cooperate or die. And what's really interesting, of course, throughout the first game is that they also give each other code names based on which number they are, so they don't actually know their real names. And so by the end of the game, you kind of learn everyone's real names and also how they're related. And so this is a very cool thing, again, very similar to Saw, is that you have a bunch of strangers that turns out through a few degrees of separation, some of them are actually long lost siblings, some of them are actually related, some of them actually already know each other, know exactly who they are. And of course, in the classic murder mystery style, fashion of the game, there's always one character who usually dies very early on, and you're always wondering, oh, did that person really die, or were they faking their own death? So there's definitely that kind of, mystery, to the game itself. And so by the end of the game, of course, there's one character amongst all the 9 that is actually the killer and is actually the betrayer. And so you kind of have to figure out who that is and also what the story is and relationships between each character. And a lot of this are just given through dialogue. Sometimes you'll be stuck in a room with someone else and you kind of get their backstory, who they are, etc. And, once you find out what their real name is, which is a great thing that they gave them all code names, because once you find out what their real name is, then you can finally put together, oh, wait, you have the same last name as this person and stuff like that. And so everything is always super connected. Again, this goes from a very simple game about surviving on a ship to like large scale, like a large story that goes just honestly insane. This is some of the best writing and best story and sci-fi I think I've read in a while. Not really sci-fi, but there are some aspects to it in there. The other thing I like about this game in terms of a puzzle game is that you basically are in a room and you have a 3D kind of environment. You use arrows to move around the environment to look at the different walls. What I enjoy about it is that literally everything in the rooms are interactive. So when you click on, like the wall or like even like the standard bed or whatever, you'll still get dialogue saying, yeah, that's a wall, or that's a bed, or that's nothing, because everything in the environment is part of the puzzle, because the rooms are the puzzle. It's really, really cool, and I love the tone and style of the game. Again, the writing is very good. When it deals with someone being killed, the horror aspect and describing the characters' emotions, it really takes a lot of time to describe how the characters are feeling and how they feel horrified. And again, you have all these numbers and symbology, and there's of course cracking the code of the immediate problem, but there's also the greater code of the story and why things are numbered a certain way they are, and certain things that you think are just part of the standard puzzle solving procedure or little details just on the ship itself turn out to tell a much bigger story. This is some of the best writing I've ever encountered, and in terms of mystery writing, it's really up there. 999 is an amazing series, and the characters are written really well too. Something else I also really appreciate just about writing is there are a lot of very philosophical perspectives and things about this game. One of the main themes, especially of the first game, is about the morphogenic field, which is this experimental concept by Rupert Sheldrake that he performed in the 70s. And it's still something that's still kind of popular today. It's a pseudoscience, but there's some legitimacy to it in some format. I don't know. I find that's always super, super interesting that we have real concepts or things about probability, chance, certain just, really fun, interesting things that you don't think about that are in this series that are really interesting to apply, like the 3-door probability principle. What makes a human being? Is it just our memories or our experiences? I.e., if someone were to erase your memory, would you still be the same person? My favorite one is actually about the hacker kind of sidetrack, where she's talking about the differences between a monitor and the PC itself. That the programming is displayed on the monitor, but if you destroy the monitor, you don't actually destroy the PC. And so it's using that as an analogy for the origin of thoughts. Where do our thoughts actually come from? And they only displayed on the human rather than coming from another place around. Or do our thoughts come from our brains or somewhere else? Just this game has just a series of really fascinating concepts, situations, and again, characters. And of course, by the end of the game, it tells a very distinct, cohesive story with a very definite bad guy and a definite good guy. And and there's certain things too around along the game as you're playing that influence things, like really big decisions. Like, for example, you come across a firearm and you have to choose who to give it to, who's the most trustworthy that can hold on to this gun. And there's just a lot of very common human, situational moments in this game that are just so memorable and iconic and just stick with you. Again, I absolutely love this game. And you also have to use your brain a lot for the puzzle solving and things like that. And some of these puzzles can really, really stump you. But again, nothing so much that I'd ever have to look up a guide. I maybe once, but whether it deals with math or patterns or whatever, it's a lot of fun and it tells a story to boot. So, it's really good. Another thing I forgot to mention that's really adds to the game is the music, the atmospheric music in these games, whether it's a horror scene or a thriller scene where you're trying to escape a room, or an emotional scene. The music in the Nonary games is really, really amazing. Just really well done. And in terms of atmosphere, I've never had a game where this is a 2D, DS game where you're solving puzzles in a point and click adventure, but I've never had music immerse me so intensely into that scenario, because it kind of makes you feel what the characters are feeling. And it's perfectly for the scope of the game and what it's accomplishing. It's just perfect for it. Another thing that's really cool about it is that you also have essentially inventory to keep all of the items specific to that room that you're in. There's a point in the game where I just got addicted to starting a new room and just love getting into it. Like, okay, where are we going to go first? What are we going to look at next? There's no way to really lose the game or die, because I mean, sometimes there are time limits, but they're not real. There are definitely ways that you can die, quote unquote. And I'm pretty sure they do this in the other games where there's different timelines. And so even though you might choose a direction like, oh, let's go left instead of right, and everyone dies, the game immediately restarts and you start from that timeline where you can choose right. And that's really cool. They definitely do that in the later games, where once you've done all the timelines, you unlock the final timeline and the final truth. And I swear, this isn't a game I usually think about, honestly, but I really should, because the way it handles these puzzles and situations in the story are just really amazing. And again, the sound effects for when you hit the switch and all the things you interact with are really, really cool. It's so interesting how this game, even though it's a video game and has an anime style to it, a lot of these situations feel very real. Like, you're stranded on this ship where all the windows are bolted. It's very bizarre, but also very believable. And yeah, so maybe I'll talk about the story just a little bit. It's actually kind of hard to talk about the story, because it goes in places that are just, and I don't want to give spoilers, so actually I won't talk about the story. But I will say that at a certain point, especially in the sequel, it involves things like time travel, and time travel in a way that I have not seen it done before. That's really, really smart. And really interesting. What I also love about the sequel is, and about all these games, is, again, each one of these characters actually knows each other. And when you have this aspect of time travel where people don't know who they are yet, it's just really, really interesting. And also there's so many, especially they take advantage of this in the later games, where there's so many different endings that that they can just do almost whatever they want with it. For example, you can have just a joke ending if you want, because it's not just another timeline, and then go back to the overall timeline and can pick up from where you left off. Another thing that's great about this, and I think this is, I think it comes in the game, but also in the 3DS itself, but the Note app in the 3DS was great for this game, because I could literally write down the codes to all of the puzzles or all of the things I need to calculate in the Notes app. So it felt very cohesive as a single, a proper DS game, because it's very much built around that aspect of puzzle solving. Also, what I do love about all the characters is they have a very distinct style, distinct personalities. They're really, really great. There is also the Nonary Games remastered trilogy edition that came out on like Xbox of all things, and so that's kind of cool, but I definitely prefer the old sprites and old animations. It was kind of weird though that in Virtue's Last Reward they changed everything up, where everything was like 3D-ish and they got rid of the animated sprites. So I was kind of like a little bit torn about that. And also, I would say that as the games go on, I would say that the first one is almost the strongest, and that the quality of the games kind of deteriorates slightly, but they're still really good. For example, like when you get to the end of the third game, the mastermind that had, organized this whole thing, his motives are complex, i.e. that no one really gets why he did any of this. And again, this is one of those series where it's like super complicated. The writing is really, really great. It never really has a super satisfying conclusion sometimes. Maybe it's too complicated, honestly, for me to get, because like all the different timelines are very, very hard to understand. The first game has a great ending. The second game also has a pretty good ending. But the third game just kind of is like, throws up its hand and says, I don't know what to do. Again, this game, it goes in places I had never expected to think it would go. But yeah, really amazing game. Definitely the most engaging, the best DS game I ever played, honestly. And it's something I maybe might not appreciate enough, I don't know. They're just funny moments. Like, I don't know, the characters come across this giant green button, and they're like, "Hey, should we press it?" And if you press it, the entire place gets nuked. Like, just stupid stuff like that. Again, the tension, the drama, the characters in all of the games, and the sci-fi components of the writing is just mind-bending. I absolutely love it. And I love how they mix the themes of thriller, horror, and sci-fi into a cohesive game that feels really, really cool. I think these games would make a great set of movies, but I don't think you'd be able to tell that kind of story in that amount of time. Anyway, this is my favorite DS trilogy, and I love it. I think they're amazing, amazing games. This game definitely has inspirations, I would say, from And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. Because in every game, there's always a Zero, who is the guy who kidnapped everyone. And so his motives are complex, but, he basically has a reason for each of these people being here. And each character kind of knows tacitly why they're here, and others are completely out of the blue. And so Zero will sometimes appear as a voiceless face behind like a microphone or something. In the second game, he appears as an AI rabbit called Zero the Third. Just crazy stuff. And again, like the overarching story, to really understand it, is really one of the most complex stories I've ever encountered. More complex than Metal Gear Solid. It is absolutely insane, the amount of quality and writing in this little DS gem. It is absolutely, I would say, a must play. It's amazing how well done it is. Anyway, I don't know what else to say outside from that. I love this game. I love this game series. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get a sequel, but I feel like it's written in such a way that we might as well could, with, again, time travel and biological weapons and all the rest of it. I think Spike Chunsoft, they went on to make the Danganronpa series, which I've been very hesitant to dip my toe into because because it just seems like one of those games that's a little bit too kooky, a little too quirky, and that's another game for another time. But if I ever get into those games, I might do that only because of 999. Like, Danganronpa always felt like 999, but for like teens or like young kids or something. It was very goofy and over the top. But anyway, I kind of didn't realize how much I love this series until I actually did this review, and yeah, it's really good. Anyway, that's it. See you later, guys.